too big, just sit on it, the rancher said calmly, moments before she discovered the truth. Clara had always lived in the city. Tall buildings, busy streets, and the constant hum of traffic were her normal life. But ever since she was a little girl, she had dreamed about spending time on a real ranch, surrounded by open fields, animals, and the quiet rhythm of nature. The idea of leaving the city behind, even for just a summer, excited her more than anything she had done in years. When she finally found Sunnybrook Ranch through an online ad, she immediately wrote to the owner, Margaret, asking if she could work there for a few months. She never expected that her request would be accepted, but a few weeks later she was on a bus, heading toward the countryside, suitcase in hand, heart full of anticipation. The bus ride was long, and the scenery slowly changed, from crowded streets and noisy highways to winding country roads, green fields, and distant hills. Clara pressed her face to the window, staring at the open space and feeling a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. Everything looked peaceful and calm, so different from the chaos of city life. Birds flew freely in the sky, cows grazed lazily in the fields, and the smell of fresh grass filled the air even from inside the bus. It was a world she had only seen in pictures before, but now it felt real, almost magical. When the bus finally stopped near a small dirt road lined with tall oak trees, Clara stepped out and breathed deeply. The air smelled clean, earthy, and alive. Margaret was waiting near the gate of Sunnybrook Ranch. She was a middle-aged woman with sun-kissed skin, strong arms, and an easy smile. Her presence was calm, steady, and somehow reassuring, like someone who had seen and handled everything life could throw at a ranch. "You must be Clara," she said warmly. "Welcome to Sunnybrook. I hope you're ready for a summer you won't forget."
Clara smiled nervously.
She had imagined this moment for months, but now that it was real, a mix of excitement and nerves made her heart race. Margaret handed Clara a set of keys and a small notebook. "This is your guide for the first few days," she explained. "We'll take it slow.
But there's a lot to see, and I want you to feel comfortable."
Clara thanked her, feeling the first hint of reassurance. Margaret led her down a narrow dirt path that wound between barns, fenced fields, and a large pasture where cows and horses grazed.
Every step Clara took brought something new to notice. The sound of hooves on the ground, the occasional moo from the cows, and the distant clucking of chickens in a coop. She had never realized how alive a ranch could feel. It wasn't just the animals. It was the sense of rhythm, of life moving at its own pace. Margaret started showing Clara around the main ranch buildings. There was a large barn filled with hay bales stacked neatly, a stable where horses nickered softly as they saw her, and a small workshop with tools hanging on the walls. Clara was fascinated.
Everything was organized and clean, but it had a charm that made it feel alive. Margaret's voice guided her through each area.
"This is where we feed the animals, and this is where we store tools. It may seem simple, but every part has a purpose. Life here is about understanding your surroundings and working with them, not against them." Clara nodded, taking notes mentally, if not on the notebook. After the tour, Margaret decided it was time for Clara's first task. Clara expected something simple, like feeding chickens or collecting eggs, but Margaret's next words caught her completely off guard. She pointed to a large object in the middle of the pasture and said casually, "Don't worry, it's easy. Just sit on it." Clara froze, staring at the shape. It looked unusually large, much bigger than anything she had ever seen in a pasture. It wasn't quite a haystack, and it didn't look like any piece of equipment she knew. "Sit on it?" she repeated, unsure if she had heard correctly. Margaret's calm smile only grew.
"Yes. Just sit on it."
"Trust me, you'll see." Clara hesitated, feeling a mix of curiosity and nervousness. She had grown up in a city where sitting on strange objects was never recommended. But something about Margaret's calm and steady presence made her trust the woman. Taking a deep breath, she walked slowly toward the object, her shoes crunching on the gravel and dry grass. As she got closer, she realized the shape was soft, yet firm in some places. But she reached out and touched it, half expecting it to be hay, half expecting something else entirely. The surface was warm, smooth, and surprisingly alive under her fingers. Margaret watched quietly, not rushing her.
Go on. It's okay, she said softly.
Brad cry back to the sofa. In a different smile, he ticks off the pattern, but she still knows that days come.
But as she settled, she noticed a small, almost imperceptible movement. She froze. "Did it move?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Margaret chuckled quietly. "Just a little."
You'll get used to it. It's friendly.
Clara's heart beat faster. Everything about this moment felt strange and exciting. Breaths. She had no idea what she was sitting on, yet there was a calmness to Margaret's words that made her want to stay. For the next few minutes, Clara tried to make sense of what she was experiencing. The object beneath her was so large it could have been a small hill. It shifted gently, as if adjusting to her weight. The sun was warm on her back, and a light breeze carried the scent of hay and grass. The world seemed to slow down. Inspirations. Clara realized she had never experienced such stillness and awareness before. Her city life had been full of noise and rush, but here she felt every sound, every smell, every movement. It was like stepping into a completely new world where time moved differently, where every moment was meaningful. Other ranch hands watched with quiet amusement. They had seen this moment many times before, and they knew the reaction it would provoke. Inspiration. Clara, however, was completely unaware. She thought she was just sitting on some strange piece of equipment, or maybe a giant pile of hay, but there was something alive beneath her, something enormous yet gentle. Margaret stayed beside her, letting her adjust, knowing that Clara would discover the truth soon enough. Patience. As Clara sat there, a strange sense of excitement and fear intertwined. She couldn't stop thinking about what it could be. Was it a new kind of equipment? A huge animal she had never seen? Her mind raced with possibilities, but no matter what she guessed, she was completely unprepared for the reality she was about to face. Margaret's calm demeanor, the wide open fields, the gentle sounds of the ranch, it all combined into a moment Clara would remember for the rest of her life. Finally, after a few more minutes, Margaret knelt beside her and said,
"It's bigger than most things you've seen, but there's nothing to fear. Just take your time."
"Breath. You'll understand soon." Clara nodded, holding her breath, her mind full of questions. But the first time in a long while she felt completely present. Every sound, every movement, every smell mattered. She realized she had never truly noticed these things in her city life. Here on Sunnybrook Ranch, life had its own rhythm, and she was becoming a part of it. By the end of the day, Clara had learned something important, even before discovering the true nature of what she was sitting on. She had learned trust, patience, and observation. She had learned that sometimes the most ordinary instructions like, "just sit on it," could lead to extraordinary discoveries. She also realized that Margaret, with her calm voice and steady hands, had a way of guiding people into experiences they could never anticipate. Clara felt a mix of nervousness and excitement about what was coming next. She knew that this summer on the ranch would be unlike anything she had ever experienced. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting golden light across the fields, Clara finally stepped off the massive object. She was still unsure what it was, but she felt a strange sense of connection to it already. Margaret smiled and said, "We'll talk more about it tomorrow. For now, you've done well." Clara walked back toward the farmhouse, her mind buzzing with questions and possibilities. She couldn't wait to learn more about the ranch, the animals, and the lessons Margaret had to share. That first day had already taught her more than she had expected, and she had a feeling the summer was only going to get more incredible. The next morning, Clara woke up early, her body still tired from the long bus ride and her first day on the ranch, but her mind was buzzing with curiosity. She couldn't stop thinking about the strange, enormous object she had sat on yesterday. Was it a piece of equipment? A giant haystack? Or something alive, as Margaret had hinted with her calm smile. She dressed quickly in sturdy boots, jeans, and a simple shirt, ready to face whatever the ranch had in store for her. The sun was just rising, painting the fields in golden light, and a soft breeze carried the smell of grass and earth through the open windows of her small room. Clara felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness, like a child on the first day of school.
Margaret was already outside when Clara stepped onto the porch of the farmhouse.
She was carrying a small basket of fresh eggs and a towel draped over her shoulder. Her calm presence was comforting.
"Good morning, Clara," she said with a warm smile. "Ready for another day?"
Clara nodded eagerly. "Yes, but I still don't understand what that thing is," she said, pointing vaguely toward the pasture. Margaret chuckled softly. "Patience, Clara. You'll understand soon enough."
"Today you'll learn more about it, and you might even get to touch it again. But first, let's start with breakfast and a small tour of the working areas."
We like to begin the day slowly. Clara followed Margaret into the farmhouse kitchen, which smelled of fresh bread and strong coffee. Two other ranch hands, Paul and Jenna, were already eating at the wooden table, chatting quietly about the day ahead. Clara introduced herself, feeling a little shy, but they welcomed her warmly. "Don't worry," Paul said with a grin. "You'll fit in here just fine." Break. "Just remember, everything seems bigger out here than you expect, and nothing happens fast. You'll get used to it."
Clara laughed nervously. "I hope so," she said.
The breakfast was simple but hearty. Eggs, toast, and fresh milk straight from the cows. Clara noticed the care with which Margaret and the others prepared the food, but every action seemed deliberate, almost mindful, as if even the smallest task was part of a bigger rhythm. After breakfast, Margaret led Clara toward the pasture again. This time, she walked closer to the object, and Clara's curiosity returned with full force. As they approached, Clara could see it more clearly. It was enormous, far bigger than any horse or cow she had ever seen. Its shape was broad and round, but it moved subtly, almost imperceptibly. Clara felt a shiver of anticipation. Margaret knelt slightly and said, "Go ahead."
"Sit on it again, but take your time. Feel it carefully." Clara hesitated.
She had been nervous yesterday, and today the object seemed even more imposing. But she trusted Margaret. Slowly she lowered herself, and as she did, the object shifted slightly under her weight. This time, Clara paid closer attention. She noticed small movements, a gentle pulse beneath her hands, and the warmth radiating through the surface. Her heart raced. This was no ordinary object. The realization made her stomach flutter. "It's alive, isn't it?" she whispered. Margaret nodded calmly.
"Yes, it is. You've been brave, and now it's time to learn about it."
"But first, let's sit for a moment and observe."
Clara took a deep breath, trying to calm herself.
She had always been cautious around animals, but there was something about the calm energy of Margaret and the gentle movements of this enormous creature that made her feel safe. As she sat, Margaret began to explain the animal's story.
"This is Buster," she said softly. "He's a rare breed of draft cow. Most cows aren't this big,
but Buster was bred carefully for strength and calm temperament. Despite his size, he's gentle and patient. People often fear him at first, but he's harmless if you respect him. Clara's eyes widened. Bration. A cow? That big? She asked, incredulous. Breath. Margaret nodded. Yes, Buster is unusual, but we've cared for him for years. Part of the ranch, part of the family. Clara felt a mix of amazement and relief. She had been sitting on the back of a cow without realizing it. She laughed quietly, partly from disbelief and partly from relief. Margaret encouraged Clara to gently stroke Buster's back. At first, Clara's hands trembled, but as she felt the cow's smooth fur and warm body, her nervousness faded. She could feel the strength beneath her fingers, the subtle heartbeat, and the calmness that radiated from Buster. The animal shifted slightly, leaning into her touch, almost as if acknowledging her presence. Clara's amazement grew. She had never been so close to such a massive animal, and yet she felt a sense of connection, a surprising trust between them. The morning passed slowly, filled with careful observation and hands-on learning. Margaret showed Clara how to approach Buster safely, how to read his body language, and how to communicate through gentle touches and calm words. Clara discovered that despite his enormous size, Buster could be guided with patience, and that fear or sudden movements only confused him. It was a lesson not just about animals, but about life. Patience, calmness, and awareness were key to understanding even the most intimidating situations. By late morning, Clara was already feeling more confident. She walked alongside Buster as Margaret led him to a different pasture, practicing gentle nudges and steady guidance.
The cow moved gracefully despite his massive body, and Clara marveled at the way such strength could coexist with such gentleness.
Margaret smiled as she watched Clara's progress. "You're doing well," she said. "It takes time, but you're learning quickly. Just remember, respect and observation matter more than force."
Clara nodded, absorbing every word. As the day continued, Clara learned more about the ranch itself.
Margaret introduced her to the other animals, smaller cows, horses, chickens, and even a few goats. Each animal had its personality, and Clara began to notice the subtle ways they communicated. The ranch was alive not just with animals, but with rhythm and energy. Clara realized that life here moved differently than in the city. There was no rush, no constant noise, only the steady pace of living creatures and the care required to coexist with them. Around midday, they returned to the farmhouse for a short lunch. Clara's hands were still tingling from the gentle connection with Buster. She couldn't stop thinking about him. Breaths. Margaret noticed her fascination and smiled knowingly. Breath. He has that effect on most people. At first they are shocked, sometimes scared. Then they begin to understand.
By the end of the summer, you'll see Buster in a completely different way.
Clara nodded eagerly. She wanted to understand everything. The animals, the routines, the ranch life itself. She felt a sense of purpose and discovery she had never experienced in the city. After lunch, Margaret suggested a short walk to the edge of the property. As they walked, she shared stories of past summers, of the challenges and joys of ranch life, and of the animals that had shaped Sunnybrook Ranch over the years. Clara listened intently, captivated by every detail. Margaret's calm storytelling and easy manner made it feel like she was opening a window into a world Clara had only dreamed about. It wasn't just about learning tasks or routines. It was about understanding a way of life that demanded patience, respect, and observation. By late afternoon, Clara was back with Buster, practicing what she had learned that morning. She gently guided him along a small path, amazed at how responsive he was to calm words and careful movements. The cow's massive size was no longer intimidating. It felt almost comforting, like a protective presence. Clara realized that her fear had been replaced by fascination, respect, and a strange sense of friendship. She could feel the bond forming, even though she had only met him a day ago. As the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the fields, Clara and Margaret sat quietly, watching Buster graze peacefully. Clara's heart was full. She had learned more in one day than she could have imagined. About patience, trust, and the surprising calm that could come from unexpected places. She felt proud of herself for stepping into something unknown and discovering a connection that was deeper than she had expected. Margaret's calm voice reminded her, "The first step is always the hardest, but once you take it, the world opens up in ways you can't imagine." By the time Clara returned to the farmhouse, her arms tired but her heart full, she felt a new sense of belonging, wrath. Sunnybrook Ranch was no longer just a place she was visiting. It was becoming a part of her summer, a part of her story, and a part of her discovery. She went to bed that night with thoughts of Buster, the animals, and the peaceful rhythm of the ranch dancing in her mind. She knew tomorrow would bring new lessons and surprises, and she couldn't wait to experience them. The object she had sat on was no longer a mystery. It was the beginning of a summer full of wonder, learning, and unforgettable moments. The next morning, Clara woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting soft golden light over the fields. Birds sang quietly in the distance, and the faint rustle of leaves added a gentle rhythm to the air. Clara had barely slept, her mind replaying the events of the previous day, over and over. She couldn't stop thinking about Buster, the enormous cow she had discovered. She had touched him, guided him, and even felt a strange sense of connection. But she still hadn't fully realized the truth about his size or how unusual he really was. Proud. Today, Margaret had promised she would help Clara understand him fully. Clara dressed quickly, tying her hair back and lacing her boots tightly. Her heart raced with curiosity, but she felt ready. Margaret was already waiting near the pasture when Clara stepped outside. She waved, smiling warmly, as if she had expected Clara to be anxious. "Good morning," she said. "Ready to meet Buster up close again?" Clara nodded eagerly, feeling both nervous and excited. As they walked across the soft grass toward the pasture, Clara's eyes kept returning to the enormous shape she had seen yesterday. The sunlight made it look even bigger, its broad frame casting a shadow across the ground. Clara's mind was filled with questions. How had she not realized it yesterday? Psst! How could an animal that huge be so calm? And what exactly made Buster so different from ordinary cows? When they reached Buster, Clara's breath caught in her throat. From a distance, he had looked enormous, but now, up close, his size was almost unbelievable. His broad shoulders and massive body made him look like a gentle mountain standing in the middle of the pasture. His dark eyes followed them calmly, and a faint breeze carried the smell of fresh hay in the earth around him. Clara's first instinct was to step back, overwhelmed by the sheer size of the animal. Margaret, however, remained calm, placing a reassuring hand on Clara's shoulder. "Take your time," she said softly. "There's nothing to fear. Reyes, you're safe."
Margaret motioned for Clara to approach slowly. Feel him, listen to him, and observe.
Clara took a deep breath and extended her hand, letting her fingers brush against his fur. The warmth radiating from his body surprised her, perhaps. It was solid and steady, yet gentle. She placed both hands on him and felt the subtle movement beneath her fingers, the rise and fall of his muscles, the slow, calm rhythm of his breathing. Clara was amazed. This was not just a big cow. It was a living, breathing presence that seemed to radiate patience and strength all at once.
Margaret spoke quietly, almost as if sharing a secret. Buster is extraordinary.
Most cows aren't this size, and few are this calm. He was bred carefully over generations, but it's more than genetics. Brah. He's gentle because we treat him with respect and care. That's why he's safe to sit on, guide, and interact with. Clara's eyes widened. Friends. She had always thought of cows as ordinary farm animals, but this one was clearly different. She realized that her first instinct to be cautious had been right, but now she understood that patience and calmness were the keys to connecting with him. Margaret encouraged Clara to sit on Buster again, this time guiding her carefully. Place your hands here, adjust slowly, and let him feel your weight, she said. Clara obeyed, lowering herself carefully onto his broad back. At first, she felt a gentle shift beneath her weight, and then a slow, steady pulse. Her heart raced, but she also felt a strange sense of trust. She was no longer just observing him. She was experiencing him fully. The enormity of his body combined with his calmness created a sensation she could hardly describe. It was powerful and reassuring at the same time. Once Clara was seated, Margaret stepped back and smiled. Now, watch closely, she said. Bay. Clara looked around, still trying to process the scale of Buster's body. She noticed details she had missed before, the way his muscles moved beneath his skin, the way his large hooves pressed firmly into the soft earth, and the gentle swaying of his massive head as he surveyed the pasture. Clara realized she had underestimated him completely. He wasn't just large, he was extraordinarily large, bigger than any draft animal she had ever seen in pictures or in books. And yet, he moved with a grace that made him seem almost peaceful. Margaret continued speaking, her voice calm but full of excitement. Buster isn't dangerous, but his size is unusual. People often see him and assume he's wild or untamed, but he's gentle because he trusts us. That trust is earned through care, attention, and respect. Today, you'll understand not just his size, but his story. Clara leaned forward slightly, intrigued, desperate.
His story? She asked. Margaret nodded.
Inspiration. Yes, Buster was born smaller than most of his breed, but we noticed something different about him. Even as a calf, he had a calm demeanor. Over the years, with proper care and healthy growth, he became the size he is today. But size alone doesn't make him special. It's his heart, his patience, and his calmness that make him extraordinary. Clara felt a mixture of awe and respect. She had never imagined that a cow could have such a personality, that it could radiate such a strong but gentle presence. But she realized that her own fear of his size yesterday had been normal, but her fear had been replaced by fascination. She reached down and gently stroked Buster's neck, feeling the warmth and solidity beneath her fingers. Buster shifted slightly, leaning into her touch, and Clara laughed quietly. He really does understand, she whispered. Margaret smiled. Animals are smarter and more aware than people often think. Buster knows who is patient, who is kind, and who respects him. That's why he let you sit on him yesterday without hesitation. The morning passed slowly as Clara continued to interact with Buster, guided carefully by Margaret. She learned how to sense his mood through subtle movements, the flick of his ears, the position of his tail, the rhythm of his breathing. She practiced gently nudging him to guide his direction, and he responded immediately, moving with deliberate, slow steps that emphasized his incredible size. Clara marveled at how such a massive animal could be so responsive, so gentle, and so aware of the world around him. Margaret then shared another fascinating detail. Buster's size is rare, yes, but it's also why he's so remarkable. Inspiration. Most people are intimidated by him, but those who take the time to understand him discover that his strength and size are not threats. They're opportunities to learn about patience, respect, and trust.
Clara nodded, absorbing every word.
She realized that this lesson was about more than just animals. It was about life. Fear often comes from misunderstanding, and trust comes from observation, patience, and care. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Clara guided Buster toward a small stream at the edge of the pasture. She felt the cool water on her hands as she washed a small patch of mud from his legs, marveling at how large and solid his hooves were. Buster stood perfectly still, his massive frame steady and reassuring. Clara realized that her initial fear had transformed completely. She was no longer nervous. She was confident, connected, and amazed by the extraordinary creature she was discovering. She felt a deep respect not only for Buster but also for the way Margaret had nurtured and cared for him over the years. By mid-afternoon, Clara had learned something that went beyond size or strength. She had learned to be patient, to observe carefully, and to act with respect. She realized that Buster's calm nature was a reflection of the environment around him, a place of steady care, gentle guidance, and understanding. Clara thought about her life in the city, with its constant noise, rushing, and impatience. Here, in the quiet of the ranch, she understood that life could be different. It could be slower, more intentional, and more connected. Margaret watched Clara with pride. "You're learning quickly," she said, first. "Not everyone can understand Buster. Most people see him and only notice his size. But you're noticing his heart." Clara smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. She had begun the day nervous and unsure, and now she was confident, connected, and fascinated by Buster. She felt a bond forming, one that she knew would grow stronger with time. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, Clara and Margaret led Buster back to the main pasture. Clara helped guide him gently, feeling the slow rhythm of his movements beneath her hands. She realized that she was learning more than she had expected, not just about animals, but about life, trust, and patience. She had discovered that appearances could be deceiving, and that the truth, no matter how surprising, was often more extraordinary than she could imagine. By the time Clara returned to the farmhouse that evening, her arms were tired, but her heart was full. She looked out at the pasture where Buster grazed peacefully, feeling a mixture of awe and gratitude. She knew that she had experienced something rare and extraordinary. Margaret's calm guidance had helped her discover not just an enormous cow, but a lesson about respect, trust, and understanding. Clara went to bed that night thinking about Buster's enormous size, his gentle nature, and the remarkable trust he had placed in her. She knew that the days ahead would be filled with more lessons, more discoveries, and more unforgettable moments, and she couldn't wait. The following morning, Clara woke before the sun had fully risen. Her mind was still buzzing from the previous days with Buster. The enormous cow was no longer a mystery, yet she felt she had only scratched the surface of understanding him. Margaret's words echoed in her mind. Trust, patience, and respect reveal the truth about him.
Clara knew she wanted to spend the day learning everything she could.
She dressed quickly, laced her boots tightly, and grabbed a small bag with water and a snack. As she stepped outside, the crisp morning air filled her lungs, and she felt a renewed sense of energy. The farm smelled of fresh grass, morning dew, and the faint sweetness of hay. Every step she took on the soft dirt path made her heart race with anticipation. Margaret was already outside tending to the smaller cows and chickens. She waved to Clara, her calm smile offering reassurance. "Good morning, Clara. Today we'll spend more time with Buster and learn how to communicate with him even more closely." Clara nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. She followed Margaret toward the pasture where Buster was grazing. From a distance he looked peaceful and calm, his enormous frame casting a long shadow across the field. Clara's admiration grew each time she saw him. She realized how extraordinary it was that an animal of such size could be so gentle and approachable. As they reached the pasture, Margaret encouraged Clara to approach Buster slowly. Let him see you first, then move closer, she instructed. Clara followed her advice carefully. She waved gently and called his name softly. Buster lifted his massive head and blinked slowly at her. His eyes were calm, intelligent, and almost human in their understanding. Clara took a deep breath and stepped closer, letting her hands hang loosely at her sides. She reached out cautiously, brushing her fingers against the soft fur of his neck.
Buster leaned slightly into her touch, a gesture of trust that filled Clara with awe.
Margaret explained that animals, especially ones as large as Buster, respond to energy and emotion more than words.
He can sense fear, hesitation, and patience, she said. If you are calm, he is calm. If you are rushed, he will mirror that. Today you'll practice being patient with him and understanding his signals. Clara listened intently. She realized that her city life, full of hurrying and rushing, had never taught her this kind of careful observation. Breath. Here, every movement, every glance, every breath mattered. Buster was teaching her a lesson without speaking a word. Margaret guided Clara to climb onto Buster's back once again. This time, Clara felt more confident. She adjusted herself slowly, making sure her weight was evenly balanced. Buster shifted slightly, accommodating her with the ease of an experienced partner. Clara felt a strange mixture of strength and gentleness beneath her. The enormity of his body was still breathtaking, but she was no longer intimidated. Instead, she felt a connection, a sense of trust that grew stronger with every heartbeat. She could feel the power and calmness of Buster flowing through her hands and legs. As they walked together, Margaret instructed Clara to observe Buster's reactions carefully. Brr. She noticed subtle changes, the flick of his ears when he sensed something in the distance, the slight lift of a hoof as he considered his next step, the slow movement of his tail in response to insects. Every detail seemed important. Clara realized she was learning a new language, one that required attention, patience, and mindfulness. Buster was not just a giant cow. He was a teacher in his own right, showing her how to slow down, notice, and respect life around her. Later in the morning, Margaret led Clara and Buster toward a shaded grove near the edge of the pasture. She handed Clara a brush and explained that grooming was another way to communicate and bond with animals. Clara began brushing Buster's back, feeling the strength of his muscles and the smoothness of his coat. Each stroke required careful attention. Buster moved slowly, shifting slightly under her touch, showing both comfort and patience. Clara marveled at how such a large creature could respond so delicately to her simple actions. She realized that care and respect could create bonds stronger than fear or force. While brushing, Clara asked Margaret about Buster's daily routine. Margaret explained that he followed a schedule designed to keep him healthy and calm. We feed him at regular times, provide clean water, ensure he has space to move freely, and interact with him gently, she said. Buster thrives because his environment is steady and respectful. That's why he is so gentle and willing to interact. Clara nodded, taking in every word. She could see the truth of Margaret's explanation in Buster's demeanor. He was calm, confident, and unafraid, a reflection of the care he had received. As the day went on, Clara practiced walking Buster along different paths in the pasture. She learned how to guide him using gentle nudges, calm words, and steady energy. At first, she worried about making mistakes, but Margaret reassured her. It's okay to learn slowly. Buster will teach you patience if you let him. Clara found herself growing more confident with each step. She could feel the rhythm of Buster's movements beneath her, the steady strength that carried him and her safely across the field. She realized she was no longer just an observer, she was a participant, learning to move in harmony with such a massive yet gentle animal. Around midday, they took a break under the shade of a large oak tree. Clara sat on the grass while Buster rested nearby. Margaret shared stories of other animals she had cared for and how each had taught her different lessons about trust, patience, and understanding. Clara listened intently, realizing that every animal at the ranch had its own personality, just like humans. She began to see Buster not as a mysterious giant, but as a being with character, history, and a capacity for connection. After lunch, Margaret suggested they practice something new, allowing Buster to interact with smaller animals while under Clara's guidance. Clara was nervous at first, worried that the size difference could be dangerous. Margaret reassured her. Buster is gentle. He knows his strength and respects the smaller animals.
Watch and guide him calmly.
Clara led him slowly toward a small group of goats grazing nearby.
She observed how Buster moved carefully, almost as if he was aware of his size and the vulnerability of the smaller creatures.
Clara's heart swelled with admiration.
He was not only enormous but intelligent and considerate.
As they spent the afternoon practicing, Clara began to feel a deep bond forming. She noticed how Buster responded to her moods, her words, and even the gentleness of her touch. She realized that trust was a two-way street. The more patient and respectful she was, the more he responded positively. It was a powerful lesson, pray. Clara thought about her life in the city, full of hurry and impatience, and realized how different things could be when she slowed down and paid attention. Breaths. She understood that Buster's extraordinary size was only part of his story. His calm heart and patience were what truly made him remarkable. By late afternoon, Clara and Margaret guided Buster back to the main pasture. Clara felt a mixture of fatigue and exhilaration. Her arms were sore from brushing, her legs tired from guiding him, but her heart was full. She had learned more than she expected. About animals, about trust, and about herself. Margaret smiled as she watched Clara's expression.
"You're learning quickly," she said. "Not everyone understands Buster, but you are seeing him clearly."
You are patient, calm, and respectful. That's what he needs. Clara felt a deep sense of pride. She had faced her fear, embraced the unknown, and discovered something extraordinary. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the fields, Clara sat quietly, watching Buster graze peacefully. She reflected on the lessons of the day: patience, observation, respect, and calmness. She realized that these lessons applied not only to ranch life, but to life itself. Fear often comes from misunderstanding, and connection comes from attention, care, and trust. Clara smiled to herself, feeling a sense of peace she had never known in the city. The enormity of Buster was no longer intimidating. It was inspiring. That evening, Clara returned to the farmhouse, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. She had spent the day learning, observing, and connecting. She knew that her relationship with Buster was growing stronger with each passing moment. Margaret's calm guidance, the lessons of patience, and the experience of interacting with such a unique and gentle animal had changed her perspective. Clara went to bed that night with a sense of wonder, excitement, and anticipation for the days ahead. She knew that the summer would bring more discoveries, more lessons, and more moments she would never forget. The summer days were passing quickly, and Clara had begun to feel at home at Sunnybrook Ranch. The mornings were filled with sunlight and soft breezes, the afternoons with quiet observation and gentle guidance of Buster and the other animals, and the evenings with a calm reflection of the day's lessons. Clara had changed in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was no longer the nervous city girl who had stepped onto the pasture for the first time weeks ago. She had grown confident, patient, and observant. She had learned to read animals, respect their strength, and communicate through calm presence rather than force. One morning, as Clara stepped outside, she noticed that the pasture seemed more alive than ever. Buster was already grazing near the edge, and the smaller animals moved calmly around him. Margaret was nearby, tending to a small flock of chickens. Clara felt a sense of anticipation. She knew today would be important, a day to put everything she had learned into practice. She walked slowly toward Buster, letting him see and hear her approach. His massive head lifted slightly, and his eyes met hers. Bay. Clara felt a wave of connection. She had spent countless hours learning his signals, his moods, and his movements. Desk. She knew how he would respond to her. Margaret joined her, smiling. Today, you'll guide him through the whole pasture alone, she said. Clara's heart skipped a beat.
This was the culmination of everything she had learned. She felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement, Margaret continued.
I'll be nearby, but this is your chance to show Buster what you've learned. Trust yourself, trust him, and remember everything we've practiced.
Clara nodded, taking a deep breath. She felt a surge of confidence. She had come far since that first day when she had hesitated to sit on Buster, unsure of what he was. Now she was ready to guide him confidently. She approached Buster slowly and spoke softly.
"Good morning, big guy,"
she said, her voice calm and steady. Buster blinked slowly, his massive eyes full of recognition and trust. Clara placed her hands gently on his broad back, feeling the warmth and steady rhythm of his movements. She climbed onto him carefully, balancing herself and letting him adjust to her weight. Buster shifted slightly, accommodating her perfectly. Clara felt a deep sense of pride. She realized that she and Buster had formed a bond built on trust, patience, and understanding. Pasture. As they began to move through the pasture, Clara guided him using gentle nudges and calm words. She observed every subtle signal, the flick of an ear, the sway of his tail, the position of his hooves. First, she adjusted her movements accordingly, making sure Buster felt secure and guided without pressure. Margaret followed at a distance, watching with a proud smile. Clara felt a sense of harmony she had never experienced before. She and Buster moved together as a single unit, communicating silently through presence and understanding. The enormity of his body no longer felt intimidating. It was powerful, comforting, and graceful. Throughout the morning, Clara led Buster along paths she had never explored before. She navigated around small hills near streams and through shaded groves. She noticed how Buster's muscles moved beneath her hands, the smooth rhythm of his breathing, and the calm intelligence in his eyes.
Clara felt a deep sense of connection and wonder.
She realized that this experience was about more than just guiding an enormous cow. It was about learning patience, respect, and observation, qualities that would shape her life beyond the ranch.
At midday, Clara stopped near a small stream and helped Buster drink fresh water.
Breath. She brushed his back gently, observing the way he shifted slightly to accommodate her touch. Margaret approached, carrying a small lunch for both of them. They sat on the grass watching Buster graze peacefully. Margaret spoke softly, telling Clara about her own journey on the ranch. She explained how each animal had taught her different lessons, and how Buster in particular had a remarkable ability to teach patience and understanding. Clara listened intently, feeling inspired and grateful for the guidance she had received. Grasp. After lunch, Clara decided to practice something new, guiding Buster alongside smaller animals. Margaret had taught her that he was gentle enough to coexist peacefully with goats, chickens, and smaller cows, but it required careful observation and calm energy. Clara led him slowly toward the group of goats, speaking softly and maintaining a steady presence. Buster moved carefully, adjusting his enormous body so that he did not startle the smaller animals, but an amazement. She had learned to guide an amazement. She had learned to guide and communicate with such a massive creature, while ensuring the safety of the smaller animals. It was a testament to the lessons of patience, respect, and understanding she had absorbed over the past weeks. As the afternoon sun began to lower, Clara and Buster returned to the main pasture. Prepared so far. Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had learned more than she could have imagined, not only about Buster and the other animals, but also about herself. She realized that patience and respect were not just qualities needed for guiding animals, they were qualities needed for life itself. Brish. Fear often comes from misunderstanding, and true connection comes from observation, care, and trust. She thought about the city she had left behind, with its noise, rush, and impatience, and realized how much she had changed. Margaret approached and placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. "You've done well," she said. "Buster trusts you, and so do I. You've learned to observe, to guide, and to connect."
That's more than most people ever learn.
Clara felt a wave of gratitude and pride. She looked at Buster, grazing calmly in the late afternoon light, and felt a deep connection. She had come to understand him, not just his size, but his heart, his patience, and his gentle nature. Brooke. She realized that the summer at Sunnybrook Ranch had transformed her perspective on life, trust, and connection. As the sun began to set, Clara climbed down from Buster's back and brushed him gently one last time for the day. Rest. She felt a mix of exhaustion and fulfillment. She had learned to guide him, understand him, and connect with him in a way that went beyond words. Margaret called her over, and they walked together toward the farmhouse, the golden light casting long shadows across the pasture. Clara felt a sense of peace she had never known in the city. She knew that this summer would stay with her forever, not just because of the animals, but because of the lessons she had learned, and the bonds she had formed. That evening, as the stars began to appear in the clear night sky, Clara sat on the porch of the farmhouse, reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought about her first day, when she had hesitated to sit on the massive object in the pasture, unsure of what it was. She remembered the moment she discovered Buster was alive, his enormous size and gentle nature leaving her both amazed and nervous. She remembered the patience she had learned, the careful observation, and the calm guidance from Margaret. Each memory reminded her of how far she had come, how much she had grown, and how meaningful this experience had been. Clara realized that Buster had taught her more than she could have imagined. He had shown her that fear could be replaced with curiosity, that patience could lead to understanding, and that trust could create bonds stronger than she had ever experienced. She thought about the summer as a whole, the early mornings, the quiet afternoons, the lessons in patience, and the moments of wonder. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for Margaret, for Buster, and for the ranch itself. It had given her an experience she would carry with her for the rest of her life. As the days continued, Clara continued to guide and care for Buster, but each interaction was filled with confidence and calm. She knew his signals, understood his movements, and could guide him safely through any part of the pasture. She had learned to read his personality, respect his strength, and connect with him on a deep level. Buster was no longer intimidating. He was a friend, a teacher, and a symbol of the lessons Clara had learned about life, trust, and patience. By the end of the summer, Clara felt a mixture of happiness and sadness. She had grown to love the ranch, the animals, and the lessons they had taught her. But she also knew it was almost time to return to the city. On her last day, she sat on Buster's back one final time, feeling the steady rhythm of his movements beneath her. She stroked his fur gently and whispered a quiet thank you, grateful for the trust and connection they had shared. Margaret stood nearby, smiling warmly. "You've learned well," she said. "Take these lessons with you. Remember, patience, respect, and trust can guide you in all parts of life." Clara climbed down from Buster, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and love. She looked out at the pasture, the golden light of the evening reflecting off the fields and the animals grazing peacefully. She realized that this summer had changed her forever. She had discovered patience, learned to trust, and experienced the joy of connecting with an extraordinary animal. Buster had been more than just a giant cow. He'd been a teacher, a companion, and a reminder that the world was full of surprises if she took the time to notice them. As she packed her bags and prepared to leave Sunnybrook Ranch, Clara felt a mixture of gratitude, sadness, and hope. She knew she would miss Buster, the ranch, and Margaret, but she also knew that the lessons she had learned would stay with her forever. Promised herself that she would carry patience, respect, and understanding into every part of her life, just as Buster had taught her. She took one last look at the pasture. She whispered softly, "Thank you," feeling the connection, the trust, and the love that had grown over the summer. Clara left Sunnybrook Ranch with a heart full of memories, a mind full of lessons, and a new perspective on life. She had discovered the truth about Buster, about patience, and about herself. She had learned that even the most surprising experiences could teach the most valuable lessons if she approached them with curiosity, respect, and trust. And she knew that no matter where life took her, she would never forget the summer she spent on a ranch, guiding an enormous, gentle cow, and discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary.